Welcome to Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Being a fireman, father, veteran, husband, world record holder, and Ironman, he brings stories of experience to impact your life while challenging you to live it. What do you want from your life? Why do you want it? Are you willing to go through the challenges to get there? If you have the courage to take that first step, let this podcast be the catalyst to start your fire while you bring the resilience to make it continue to burn. Our lives are made up of moments called right nows. So let's get started. Forged in the Fires podcast with your host, Fireman Rob, begins now.
All right, welcome back to the Forged in the Fires podcast. I'm your host, Rob Verhelst, better known as Fireman Rob. I've got a great guest for you today. Anybody who's done a Spartan race is going to know this guy. Anybody who has heard of, and we'll get into this more, the death race. I know it sounds pretty morbid, but it's crazy. You'll know this guy. His name is Tony Matesi. It's great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Rob. I'm excited to be here.
Now I have my desk covered with things that you have done. It's insane to think about all the things you've done. You know, when you start back at the roots of, you are an entrepreneur, which means, you got your bachelor's in that and marketing and PR. So you are like the all-around person that wants to go out there and do more, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a pretty easy way to describe myself. A jack of all trades, but not a master of too much. I just like to do a little bit of everything.
I love it. But you have written a book, and we're going to get into that book. I want to make sure that people go out and, get this book, because it is it is one of those things that you really have to read. Tell us more about what that book is. It's The Legend of the Death Race, but tell us more of how that came about, because you talk about conquering life through courage, power, and wisdom. Tell us a little more about that.
Yeah. So it's, it's one of those interesting things that kind of just happens. And I say that when it took 8 years to actually make it happen. Right. But it started out, I wanted to do this crazy thing called the Death Race, which is this it's 60+ hour endurance event that takes place in Vermont, a small little town called Pittsfield. And at the time when I wanted to do this, I was like, you know what? I need to hold myself accountable. I had taken a bunch of graduate program classes at DePaul University. And one of the things that one of my professors had told me was, you have to start a blog and find a niche and just, go all in on that niche. And that's how you can kind of create a brand for yourself. And so having just I was, I think, in the final semesters of my graduate program, I was like, I'm going to start a blog about this death race thing that I'm training for. And I'll just write about it as a way to hold myself accountable. I doubt anyone will read it or give it, care to, take a look. And so I just started writing, my workouts and all this stuff. And I got the Legend of the Death Race, web domain, and just kind of rolled with it. And then that just kind of spiraled. I didn't, know what was going to come of it. But, I started going to Spartan races, and people would be like, hey, I've been reading your blogs about, these different Spartan races you're doing, and I love it. It's so great. And I was like, really? You're reading my blog? Wow, that's cool. And then, at some point, Andy Weinberg and Joe DeSena, the guys who kind of started the death race, they both had told me that they also were reading it and they thought it was fantastic, especially after I participated in the death race and started writing like a long recap. I mean, each post was, 2,000 words, and it took me like 12 posts to get the full first year story out. And so all of that, it just kept, compiling. I just kept having more and more and more content. And at some point, someone said something to me like, hey, you've got enough, material here for a book. Are you ever going to make it a book? And I was like, I never thought about that, but yeah, I guess so. I might as well. Right. And so, decided, I'm just going to keep participating in this race until I finish it officially. And once I finally did that, it was like, okay, now it's time to compile this. But, like any endeavor, sometimes you hit lots of roadblocks and lots of speed bumps, and you got to figure out, how I got to get over these. And so, I had 1 year where I was just too busy writing for Spartan Race, because I eventually got hired by the company to help develop their Spartan endurance program, which is series of events that kind of helped build people up to be able to compete in a death race. And doing that, led to me just being too busy to write my book because I was writing so much for Spartan. I was writing, blogs, and I was editing blogs, and we were doing all kinds of web content. And I was just completely spent when I'd finished the day that I didn't want to write my own story or anything. And so then a year later or so, I finally started having some more time and said, okay, I'm going to finish this thing. Finished writing it. And then it's like, you think that's the finish line, but it's not. All you've done is you've finished writing the book, and now the whole process has really just begun, because now you have to go back and edit it like a dozen times. And then you have to go through, cover designs and just so many things that you don't realize at the time. You're like, in your head, you're like, oh, once I finish writing it, that's it. No, that's just the beginning.
Well, anybody who wants to get it can go to www.legendofthedeathrace.com/book, or you can actually go to that same site and listen to the podcast about the death race and all of your endeavors. I love that. And also you're a busy man. You also have a blog on coaching with the enduranceguy.com. But I want to go back to 2012, and I found out more about you from your American Ninja Warrior, and we're going to get into that because I want to know more about that. But when you're talking about the death race that you first signed up for in 2012, and I love that you said, I want to know what your mindset was after you read that the death race, you went to it and it said youmaydie.com. What was your mindset after you read that was the URL you had to go to?
So, as a marketing professional and entrepreneur, you understand marketing at its core, and you're like, okay, no one's going to die at this thing because that would be a really, really bad business practice, right? But it's
well, they told you could.
Right. But that's the thing. It's such, that drew me in. I was like, oh my God, youmaydie.com. These guys are bold. Like, to be able to make a statement like that, I got to see what this is all about. And so that kind of got me into the whole, like, let's find out what is this race? And is it really the hardest race that's out there? And, can I finish it? And so, right. Yeah, that it intrigued me immensely. And I was like, all right, I need to, do some more research. And there was a New York Times article and video that was out, and it was very limited information, but like the tasks that you saw in that video were just so off the wall. Like, these guys had to go to the top of the mountain, memorize a Lego pattern that was like built, like it was a bunch of blocks, different colors, whatever. And then they had to go back to the bottom and then assemble it. And if they got it wrong, they'd have to go back to the top, take a look again, come back to the bottom. And I was like, oh my God, that sounds like so awesome. Cause it's not just running. It's not just this. It's like mental, physical, everything. I think one of the years, they had to take like the bike, and, they brought their bicycles with, right? But at the start of the race, they had to tape their tires together and give them to the race director. They had to take the bike apart. They had to take their bike chain off, put it in a Ziploc bag, write their bib number on it. And then they had to carry the frame for the bike the whole race, right? And then eventually they get to this pond, and they're like, okay, here's your chain. And they throw it in the pond, and the guys have to like run and jump in and swim and go find the chain in the pond after they just threw it in there. And then, eventually they somehow acquired their tires, and they had to reassemble their bike, and then they ride their bike for like 1 mile. And you're like, it's so like ridiculous, and just the mental game there. I was like, I love it. I love it. So I wanted to be a part of that. And, that's why I decided to do this race, was like, I wanted this challenge. A lot of things in life, thankfully came easily for me. I started athletics at a very young age, was always pretty quick with school and with homework. Like, I would get done with stuff so fast that, it was, I wanted a challenge. I wanted to really, really challenge myself. And the death race was definitely that challenge I was looking for.
In the first year that you did it in 2012, the story behind that is even better, because you tore your labrum in your shoulder. And that was how many weeks before that race?
So that was about 6 months before that I tore it.
6 months.
It was about 6 months. Yeah. I tore it, and it was like literally like the day after I signed up for the race, it got torn. And I was just like, well, I just paid $500 or whatever for this. I can't get a refund, so I guess I'm just gonna go with it. And I didn't know that I had torn it like right away, right? It took me about a month or two. I was doing all this training and I was like, man, my shoulder's just really hurting. Like, I don't know what's going on. Finally went to the doctor. Doctor's like, yeah, you got a nice 1-inch tear. Good job. I was like, oh man, that's not good. And I was like, well, how do you feel about me doing this race that's supposed to be like, 48 plus hours? And, he's like, well, you can't do any more damage to it, so it's up to you. And I was like, all right, just give me a cortisone shot and let's do this thing. We'll get it fixed. If I can't do any more damage, let's just get it fixed after and we'll call it a day. And so, he gave me a cortisone shot, and then like a week or two, I think 2 weeks before the event, he gave me one more cortisone shot. So within like about a 2-month period, I had 2 cortisone shots, which is probably not recommended actually normally, but he knew my goals and he was willing to help me attain them. And
You're not normal, though. That's okay.
Are any of us? And so, so I went out to the event with this torn shoulder, and it was a really tough experience because I was, I was taking opioids, I was taking Norco, and it's just not the best thing to be doing when you're doing something like this, but it helped me get through. But the sad reality is I got addicted to those painkillers for like that year. And then, when it came time for surgery, it was like, oh man, I have to stop taking these pills. This is not great. And the doctor's like, yeah, if you don't stop taking them, like you're not going to have any pain relief, after the surgery. And I was like, okay. So I had to wean myself off that. And that was my first experience with like, withdrawal and understanding how addictive a substance can be. And, I just was like, I never wanted to do that again. So ever since then, I'm very like adverse to taking pretty much anything now. Like I don't even really, I'll take a leave every once in a while, but I even hate taking that. I don't want to be dependent on anything. That's
crazy. That just adds to the aspects of that mental strength to be able to persevere, because that first year you actually didn't make the official cutoff, but you still finished. That speaks volumes to your character of wanting to complete something. Like you talk about courage, power, and wisdom. All those things came into effect when you said, well, it doesn't matter that the time is done. I'm not done. What does that mean to you?
I did not want to quit. I really, really hate quitting. And I was in a pretty bad place. I mentally checked out for about 2 hours in the race and was like, you know what, I'm done. Like, this is just not going well. My shoulder's a mess. Like, I'm going to hurt myself probably more. I was like, I don't know if I should keep going. And then I got there. I was like, you know what? No, I need to finish what I started. I need to finish what I started. And they're like, well, you can keep going, but you're unofficial. You can't actually officially finish the race. And I was like, I don't care. Like, I don't care that I can't finish. I need to keep going. So what's next? And then they, like, all right, well, go do this, whatever the next task was, go climb the mountain and carry this wood to the top of it or whatever. And it was, it was just digging deep inside and being like, I know I have more to give. And I have to give my all. The only way I wanted to be pulled from that race was if like I was, laid out flat on the ground and was just like done. I did not want to come out of that race any other way.
That makes sense. And now when you did finish it, there is something that you receive that it's not a medal. What is it?
You get this really awesome plastic skull that you can probably buy for like $2-3 on Amazon. and like there's lots of jokes about it. At one of the death races, Joe DeSena actually said to me, because I was out of it because I didn't do well performance wise, but then also I had caught like a bacterial infection and I was in a really bad spot from a medical standpoint. Like I actually got to the point where I had fever and everything, and they did have to pull me. But prior to that, I had missed a cutoff and I wanted to keep going, and I was like, I want my skull. And he's like, well, just go buy one on, eBay or something. He's like, you can go get one. I'm like, that's not how I want to earn it. Even though it's this little plastic skull, it's the journey that it represents. It's this whole endeavor that you're going through in this, this adventure of trying to see how far you can push yourself beyond your own perceived limits. It's like, I want it so that way I can represent that and look at it. And whenever I do hit a low point in my life, I can look at that skull now and be like, yeah, life can be really hard, but if I can get through this thing, I can get through anything.
That's hilarious. And it's a little plastic skull. And it's one of those things where it's like you go through life and you have little things that you pick up along the way that you understand are bigger. Somebody else could look at it and go, well, congratulations, you didn't clean your house after Halloween, so you might want to do that. But, you look at it as a sense of purpose. So that purpose actually transcended into something bigger when you started to show your perseverance as an entrepreneur and went to Joe DeCina and said, hey, there has to be some mix in between the races that you have at Spartan. Tell us some more about how you pitched that to Joe.
Yeah. So right after my first death race, like, it was just glaringly apparent because all my training leading up to it, I went and did Spartan races. I would run like multiple laps at a Spartan sprint or super, and like my second lap, I would throw like a ruck on with, maybe like a dozen beers in it or something that could like, whatever, just something to carry some weight. But I'd go do the race multiple laps. And I was like, man, they don't have anything officially that like helps train people for this crazy death race thing they have. There's this big gap. They have a 13-mile race and then they've got this death race thing and there's nothing in between. And I was like, we need to build something that fills that void so that way people can properly prepare. Because I was going to outside events like Go Ruck. There was this thing at the time, it's not in existence anymore, but called Sear Performance. I was going to all these other places to try to train for their race. And it's like, well, you should, if you're going to, have a really good viable business, you should just have everyone staying in your ecosystem completely. And I was like, you need to build more events that help lead people up this, to create those stepping, those stairs. And so I went and started my own race in Wisconsin with my friend, Chad Weiberg, who was super, generous in letting me use his farm to kind of get things rolling. And, he also made the rewards and everything. It was really cool. And so we started hosting 24-hour events on his farm. And we did a couple of those, like within 4 months of my first participation in the event. We had like a dozen people come out, not like anything crazy, but people were like, yeah, I want to come train because I want to do this death race thing. And if you've done it, you've got some experience. And, so we put those on, and that whole time I kept going to Spartan races, and every so many Spartan races, Joe would show up. This was the early days. So Joe was actually on site a lot more often in the early days of the Spartan race. And so any chance I got to see him and talk to him, I'd be like, Joe, you need to do this. You need to have events and you need to hire me to, create this event series. Cause at the time I was actually unemployed. And I was like, this is what I want to do. This is my purpose. I want to like help others achieve what I achieved. And I want to help others realize that they can go beyond their perceived limits. And I want to, just motivate and inspire. And I wanted to really harness that as like my career. And so I just kept relentlessly pitching him like just over and over and over. And then finally, at the Fenway Sprint, so they started doing stadium events where Spartan race was actually at stadiums. And they had one at Fenway, and I was able to hang out with Joe there, pretty much the whole weekend. And just was like, Joe, you got to do this. I mean, we've been talking about this for like a whole year now. Like, let's do this. Like, you've said a million times that you like it. I've sent you the one pager that explains how we're going to do it. Like, what else do we have to do? Like, and he's like, well, come up with me to the farm for a week and we'll figure it out. And so I ended up, he had a TEDx talk, which is actually really great. If you want to look it up, it's about the, art of pool maintenance and something like the art of pool maintenance and the burpee or something like that. It's on YouTube. It's really fantastic. And so I had helped him with that, his closing line for that TED talk actually. And then, it was basically like, how do I close this? I'm like, well, you got all these guys here and, you're telling them that the burpee is the greatest exercise, but, these people like data. They want, actual facts that they can rely on. So why don't you tell them to go create the data by spending the next 30 days doing 30 burpees a day? challenge them. And so that was how the Spartan 30 was born. And then, next thing you know, people are doing 30 burpees a day for 30 days. They're posting videos on all the social media. And this thing just kind of like rippled into this massive outreach program that actually brought a lot of people in that thought they couldn't do a Spartan race, right? There's a lot of people that were like, I can't do a Spartan race. Like, I could never do it. Well, if you can do 30 burpees a day for 30 burpees a day for 30 days, like, of course you can. And so more and more people started signing up for the races. And that was super cool. But yeah, he ended up taking me up to Vermont for the week after that TED Talk. And we just kind of, would spend the day on the mountain, moving really heavy rocks in the morning to build this cabin in the woods with my buddy Miguel. and all while we were building the foundation for this thing, we were talking about how are we going to build this Spartan endurance program. And it was super cool because most meetings take place inside a conference room or something, but with Joe, it was always you're doing something. You're carrying heavy rocks, you're climbing a mountain, you've got a sandbag on your back. Like, you're not sitting in a conference room. And I loved that. I was like, this is so cool that this is how, he conducts business. And I really loved it. And so, yeah, next thing you know, end of the week, we had a contract signed, and I was working for Spartan Race, starting to develop the endurance brand.
I love it. I love it. It's one of those things where your mind probably works the best when you're actually doing activities. And I think Joe may have known that, or just loved to, keep moving forward. And I love that part about it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. It's just, you just got to keep moving, and you develop a lot more ideas, I think, when you're moving.
Now, we talk about your greatest accomplishment that you feel, and I look at the death race and go, wow. And then you also have done the Cascade Crest 100, which I have to say, when I read the manual I want to read this for the audience. This is hilarious. In the manual for the Cascade Crest 100-mile endurance run, one of the first general principles, and I don't know if you read this, but it says, retain your sense of humor. Remember that you did pay for this. This event may be difficult, painful, emotional, and frustrating. Don't forget that you volunteered for this. That is the best way to say, I don't know what you're thinking.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I basically look for events now that have that kind of humor and that kind of just straightforwardness. If an event says something like that, I'm more likely to sign up for it.
I love that. It's so much better. And now you have a bunch of different things that you're looking at, but you're also going to be writing another book. I'd love to see what is that next book that you're writing?
So the next book I'm writing is going to be called Stories of Endurance. And basically it's going to be a collection of just stories from athletes of all different walks. So you got your running and ultra running. You've got your these extreme endurance things like the death race. You've got people that are doing triathlons, Ironmans, people that are doing long distance swimming, long distance biking, long distance skiing, all kinds of endurance, mountaineering, rock climbing, anything that lasts more than, I think, half hour or 20 minutes or whatever they consider endurance technically. So,
right.
I'm going to try to collect all these really fascinating stories, people who have done the PCT or people who've done the Appalachian Trail or, swam the English Channel and I'm trying to connect with all these athletes, and I've started getting some really good stories from some incredible athletes already. And I'm just going to compile this into a book so that way people can have basically, the way I view it is like this really, you can go through, anywhere into the book at any time. You don't have to read it in order, and you can just get yourself a story that's going to motivate and inspire you to go live beyond your limits.
I love that. And you're one of those people that motivates and inspires to live beyond your means. And your limits, because when you were doing that Spartan race, when you created that intermediary, you were really trying to help others to achieve their goals and to eventually compete in the death race or just find that next level that they couldn't find. How important was that for you to be able to develop that for others, since you had seen the benefits for yourself?
I mean, I think it's the most important thing in my life is helping others realize that, because, oftentimes we get stuck in our head and we think that, I can't do this, I can't do that. And we create these really negative, dialogues. And I think the reality is we can all do a lot more than we think we can. We just have to apply ourselves and go do it. And so being able to create a platform where people were able to realize that, we live in America, we live in a country where oftentimes things are really, we have it a lot easier than most places. And, we are afforded a lot of opportunities, and yet some reason a lot of people don't go and make the most of their life. And so I want to help people realize that they can make more of their life. My favorite thing about doing, like, for instance, the hurricane heat was the 4-hour event, was at the end of every event, I'd be able to tell people, like, look, you just got through this really, really hard time, and you did it with all of these people, and you worked together as a team, and you came together as a team. I want you to remember this, so that way the next time you're standing in line, at Starbucks and someone kind of tries to cut in front of you or something, you don't get mad about it, because you realize that's not worth getting mad about. You realize that life can be harder because you've gone through something like this, and you can apply that to your life and have like kind of a more stoic approach, right? And be able to just approach life in this way where you're like, I can do anything. I can get through anything, no matter what obstacles pop up in my way, I'm going to overcome them one way or another.
I love that. And you can actually find that in the book, Legend of the Death Race. Definitely in the new book also that you're going to be writing, Tony. But if people want to find your book, they can go to legendofthedeathrace.com. They can also see the podcast as well as the book. And then you've got the other side of it, the Endurance Guy blog at theenduranceguy.com. Tony, you are an amazing individual, and, I greatly appreciate you coming on today. We're going to have to end this with the questions that I told you before. I'm not going to give you these before, but here we go. Are you ready?
What? 1 second. So I want to say one thing. So the podcast.
Oh yeah,
right?
definitely.
The whole idea with that is, the Legend of the Death Race book is my story, but everyone has a different experience at this race. Everyone has, because life's not fair, and that's how the race is kind of conducted. And so everyone had a different event, and I really wanted to include all their stories in the Legend of the Death Race book, but that would have been like 100,000 page book, and just no one would have read it. So the podcast is everyone else's story, and it's a great way to hear all these different amazing people from all different walks of life who go and try to do this crazy thing called the death race. I mean, you have teachers, you have doctors, nurses, you have people who are construction workers, you have, literally all walks of life. And they all come and do this really crazy event just to see what they're made of and see if they can, overcome all these crazy obstacles. And so I share all of their stories on this podcast every week. And it's just a great way to get motivated and inspired by these amazing, amazing people.
I love that. You have so many things that people can go to find that inspiration, to find that positivity of these people who are pushing way, way, way beyond their limits. So yeah, definitely. I would suggest going to that podcast as well. I've listened to a few of the episodes, and as far as being able to get out there and get motivated, I'm not one of those that's easy to do. So, and those did. So definitely go to legendofthedeathrace.com. You can go get the book as well as listen to the podcast. And now I've got some great questions for you. And this first one's going to be interesting because I don't know if you have anything outside of your comfort zone. Question is what is one thing you haven't done but is outside of your comfort zone?
Well, so I want to do a triathlon, and the big thing that has prevented me from doing it, I would say, is my unexplainable fear of the swim. As a kid, I was a fish. I would swim all the time. I loved it. I remember being at like summer camps or whatever, and like I moved all the way up to like I think they gave us different categories, right, for how good of a swimmer you were, and like the sharks were like the highest, and I was in the sharks like with all the older kids with, no problem. And then I don't know what happened, but at some point I started having a fear of like open waters and stuff, and so I want to overcome that fear in the next year or two and go do a triathlon.
I love it. You got to do it. It's now out there. Everybody knows.
Yep. It's something I'm working on. I'm kind of crafting possibly my own personal one that I might do out here in Seattle, and it'll involve a swim across Lake Washington and then a mountain bike or a bike ride out to the mountains and then a mountain marathon.
I love it. I love it. You're going to have to invite me because I'm coming.
Let's do it.
All right. Your second question is, what is your favorite quote and why?
Ooh, my favorite quote is one by Aristotle, and I'm going to look it up so I don't say it wrong. It is, what we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit.
I love that.
I love it. It's so simple and it's so precise. Like, we can be excellent as long as we make it part of what we do. As long as we just, strive for that, doing the impossible and just keep working at it every single day, you can be excellent.
Yeah, and it's such a powerful statement, like you were saying, and you show this through your actions, that excellence isn't the result. It's the result of making it a habit, not an end result. It's not a finish line. It's not a skull, but it's all the things that led into that plastic skull that you could buy for $5.
Exactly.
All right, your last question. This is going to be a good one because I want to hear your three people. If you could pick to have coffee with three other people at a firehouse table, so in other words, nothing is off the table. You can ask anything. Who would it be and why?
Ooh, this is a good one. Okay, so one athlete that I would just love to meet is Kilian Jornet. He is by far one of the most amazing mountaineers and ultra runners that exist. Like, he recently set, I think it was like last year, he set the record on Everest for the fastest time to do it, where most people take many, like almost a month or whatever to climb it. This guy did it in like 24 hours or something. So I'd love to meet him and just pick his brain a little bit, ask him, how he built the confidence to be able to do things like this and the courage. And then, let's see.
It's a tough one.
I would like to meet, Elon Musk, because he's this very radical entrepreneur who definitely, really likes to toe the line with like what's normal and not normal and what's outside your limits. Like, the guy is, he's definitely one of those guys who just kind of walks to the beat of his own drum and takes really massive risks. And I think it takes so much courage to take the risks that he does. And so I'd like to, talk to him and pick his brain a little bit. And then, let's see. Do they have to be alive?
No, they don't.
It'd probably be one of my favorite philosophers, which would probably be Marcus Aurelius.
Oh, wow.
Because that man, everything I've read about him, he just, when it comes to leadership, he really seemed to understand how to be a good leader and, temperament. He was able to keep his cool very often. He's very known for, looking at things from a very rational standpoint and from a very stoic standpoint and not like, letting his emotions get the best of him. And I would just love to, talk to him and learn how he, came up with that. But obviously he was many generations ago.
That is a good three. That'd be a great coffee table conversation right there.
Yeah. If it had to be someone that was alive, probably Ryan Holiday, who is like, an author that is all about Stoic principles and who has taught me a lot about guys like Marcus Aurelius.
Oh, there you go. I'll give you four. All right, we're going to go to the rapid round. I'm going to give you two things. All you got to do is whatever one you pick off the top of your head. All right, here we go. Paper or plastic?
Paper.
Super salad?
Salad.
McDonald's or Taco Bell?
Oh, uh, Mc- I don't like either, but McDonald's, I guess.
Camping or hotel?
Oh, camping.
Fly or drive?
Fly.
What about sleep in late or wake up early?
Sleep in.
You had to think about that one, but I like your answer. I'm right there with you. How about run or walk?
Run.
Partly sunny or partly cloudy?
Partly sunny.
Fire or water?
Fire.
How about use a porta potty or run or drive to the next physical bathroom?
I use a porta potty.
Yeah, boy. Coke or Pepsi?
Coke.
And then go big or go home.
Oh, go big.
All right, Tony. It has been a pleasure having you on today, and I'm betting that I will have you on again after some of these new adventures and when your new book comes out. But definitely, if anybody wants to find out more about Tony, you can go to thatenduranceguy.com, find out more there, or you can find out more at legendofthedeathrace.com. He has a great podcast and a book that you should get. Tony, thanks so much for coming on today.
Yeah, Rob, thank you so much for having me. It's been a great pleasure.
All right, we'll hear from whoever it is next. We have on the Forged in the Fires podcast. Talk to you guys next time.
Thanks for listening and supporting the Forged in the Fires podcast with Fireman Rob. Remember, don't forget to like and subscribe to this podcast, and please share this episode with a friend or family. To find out more about Fireman Rob or reach out about a question, go to www.firemanrob.com. Until next time, live your life forged in the fires.